Hello class. Today we are going to learn about 1-point perspective. Now there's many different types of perspective. There's 1-point, 2-point, there's even 3-point perspective. But today we're going to focus on 1-point perspective. And that's where everything goes to 1 point. In this picture, all of the lines go to this little dot in the middle of the paper. So the road goes to the dot. Even the trees, if I drew a line that goes from here to there, even the tops of the trees go to that point. And I could even use a ruler to check that. So the tops of the trees basically go to that 1 point in the center. And same things with the tops of the buildings. It all goes to that 1 point. So the tops of the building even go to that point in the center. So with 1-point perspective, all the angles go to that 1 point in the middle. That's why it's called 1-point perspective. Now, today we're going to practice this. Now, don't worry if your drawing is not perfect today, because 1-point perspective is difficult, and sometimes it takes multiple attempts to get good at it. But today we're going to make our first attempt at 1-point perspective. And we're going to be doing a city scene, sort of like this. So we're going to be drawing a road with some buildings and maybe a few trees, and we're going to leave it at that. If we have time, we're going to color it, but if we don't have time, we'll leave it as a black and white sketch. So, here's what we need. We need a piece of paper. We need a pencil. You're going to need a straight edge. A ruler is helpful, but if you don't have a ruler, any straight edge is fine. I've even used like folders for straight edges. So if I wanted to draw a straight line, I would just draw it against the edge of the folder. So you don't have to have a ruler. You could use a folder, a piece of cardboard, anything that has like a straight edge that you can trace. So, pencil, ruler, and crayons if we have time to color. But if we don't have time to color, then we're just using these things. So let's get started. Now the first thing when you draw anything in perspective is you need the horizon line. The horizon line is where the ground meets the sky. So in this picture, I'm going to put my horizon line kind of near the middle of my paper. So I'm going to take my ruler, put it nice, kind of close to the middle of my paper. I'm going to hold it still with one hand, and I'm going to trace along the edge to make a straight line. Now, if you don't have a ruler to trace, you could do the same thing with a folder or anything that's straight. I can line it up in the middle and just draw a straight line across. So it does not have to be a ruler. All right, next. If I ever go too fast in this video, you can always pause the video to catch up at any point. Now, the next thing we need to know is whenever you have 1-point perspective, the 1 point has to be on the horizon line. So I can't put my point way up here. I can't put my point way down there. The point has to be on the horizon line. So I'm going to pick a spot to put my point. I'm going to put it right in the middle of your paper. But notice that point is touching the horizon line. Now, we're going to do the part where we draw the road. Now, if you would rather this be like a river instead of a road, that is fine too. Maybe this is like Venice, and instead of having roads, they have rivers. So you could do that as well. But I'm going to do a road just because that's pretty traditional. So I'm going to draw my road going to that point. So I'm going to put my ruler down, put it up against the dot. I'm going to have it go at an angle because I don't want my road to be straight. That would be kind of a weird road. So I'm going to do a road that's at a slight angle. So I have it going from the dot to the bottom of my paper. So I'm going to just hold my ruler and trace my line like that. And again, you could do the same thing with a folder if you don't have a ruler. So I could have lined that up to that middle dot and have drawn my line that way. So that is just as easy as using a ruler. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to line my ruler up with the dot and I'm going to draw a diagonal line down. So it's going to kind of look like a triangle. This is my road, or it could be a river. Now to make it look more like a road, I'm going to draw the lines that go in the middle of the road. So I'm just going to draw some lines. Now the lines that are close to you, make them kind of long, and the lines as they get farther away, make them a little bit shorter. And you know what? Mine's a little crooked, so I'm going to fix it. Whenever you mess up, you can always just erase and fix. Mine's just ever so slightly crooked. I'm going to try that again. So I'm going to draw some lines in the middle of my road. And as I get closer to me, I make them slightly longer. Like that. Okay. So now we got like the start of the 1 point perspective. This is like the beginning point of it. Now, we're going to draw some buildings, maybe some trees, but those things have to be in 1 point perspective too. What I find, a lot of people think that 1 point perspective is only about the road and that's it, and then they can draw everything else however they want. But honestly, if you start drawing it however you want, you kind of lose the realism, you lose the perspective. So everything, anytime you have to draw something at an angle, it's going to this point. So I'm going to show you how to draw some buildings. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line using my ruler. I'm going to draw a diagonal line in the sky. So I'm going to start at that point, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line from that point up into the sky. Now my suggestion would be to draw this line light, because there's always a possibility that we won't need the entire line. We might have to erase it later. So lightly draw a line that goes from the point diagonally into the sky. It should go above that horizon. So our buildings are going to be tall. They're going to start down here and they're going to go all the way up here. So this is going to be the line that shows us where the tops of our buildings are. Okay, so we're going to draw our first building. This is the part that sometimes people get confused on, so please just pay attention. So the top of the buildings are at this angle. So make sure that you draw to this line, because this is the angle that the top of our building is going to be at. So I'm going to draw a straight line from here to the road. So our building is going to line up like directly with the road. So I'm just going to draw a straight line from here down to the road. And I want it to be as straight as possible. If you draw it crooked, it might look like the building is falling over. So you want to draw a nice straight line. Now you could use a ruler if you want to. Sometimes I find the ruler helpful and sometimes I don't. It kind of depends. So I'll let you choose. So you either draw a straight line down with a ruler or you just free draw it. But you want it to be straight. Sometimes I see you guys draw lines like this. That's not a straight line. That is a diagonal line. So we don't want a diagonal line. We want a straight line. We want a line nice and straight so that our building is not falling over. Then I'm going to draw another straight line directly next to it because this is the other part of the building. So I'm going to do another straight line directly next to it like this. And again, it goes from the road all the way to that top line. So right here, this from here to here, that's the top of the building. And this line along the road, that's the bottom of the building. Okay, I darkened it up so you could see it better. So this is the front side of your building. Building number 1 is right there. Okay, now this is a three-dimensional building. It's not flat. So here's what we're going to do. We have to draw the other side of the building. Now this is 1 point perspective, so this side of the building is going to be straight. It's not going to be diagonal, it's going to be straight. So I'm going to draw from the corner of this building a straight line over. It should be parallel to the horizon. So if you're not sure if it's straight, look at the horizon and be like, yep, they're both at the same angle, they're both straight. And then the same thing, I go to the top corner and draw a straight line, about the same size. So again, this is the front of the building, this is the side of the building. And then I'm going to draw a straight line from here to here to connect it all. And it needs to be straight. If you make it crooked, the whole illusion gets messed up. And you could use a ruler if you want to. I sometimes think it's easier when you're drawing small lines if you're drawing them straight. Sometimes I think it's easier to just draw it in and not use a ruler. But other people like to line their ruler up and make it perfectly straight. Okay, so this is my first building. Here is the front of the building. Here is the side of the building. So the front of the building is at this angle at the top. The side of the building is perfectly straight. And this is 1 point perspective. This is the part that takes practice. It takes a long time to get good at 1 point perspective. Some people don't even really learn this until like high school or college. So don't worry if you don't get this perfectly right the first time. So we're going to draw another building for practice. We already have one. Right now it just looks like a box because we haven't added windows or anything. But we're going to draw one more to get practice. Now this one is going to be way taller. And the reason it's going to be way taller is because this diagonal line is getting taller. And you want it to be taller because that's going to add the perspective. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw one more building. I'm going to draw another straight line from here all the way to here. I'm going to go all the way to that diagonal line. This time I think I'm just going to use a ruler because it's kind of a long line. So I'm going to draw a line from the road all the way up to that diagonal line in the sky. And I want to make it as straight as possible. If you make it crooked, the building will look like it's falling over. So I'm repeating all the steps we did before. It's the same thing again. All right, so one line. Now I've got to have a second line right next to it. And the same thing, it's going to go from that line at the bottom, so the road. I'm going to start at the road, draw a straight line that goes all the way up to where that diagonal line is. I know it seems silly that it's that tall, but it totally will work in the end. You have to trust it. So this building is taller than this building because this building is closer to you. So it's the illusion that this building is closer than that building, even though they're probably about the same size. That's what the perspective is all about. Now, this is the top. So this diagonal line from here to here, that is the top of my building. I like to darken it up because sometimes I find you don't see where the building is. And same thing at the bottom, this diagonal line where the road is, that is the bottom of the building. Now I know it's a little silly to have the buildings directly against the road, but it's just an easy way to teach perspective the first time. In real life, we'd probably draw a sidewalk or something there so that there's space in between the road. So this is the front of the building. We haven't done the side of the building. So to make it look three-dimensional, we have to do the side of the building. So I'm going to go to the corner. I'm going to draw a straight line over. Notice it's straight. It's not diagonal. We want it straight just like how the horizon is straight. And then at the bottom corner, same thing, straight line. So front of the building, side of the building. And I'll even draw a straight line down to connect it. You can use a ruler or you could just draw it. Just try to make it as straight as possible. Okay, so I've got 2 buildings. Now in theory, you could add more buildings if you want, but I'm kind of running out of room on this side of my paper, so I'm just gonna leave it right now. Now the horizon line that goes through the middle of the building, I'm actually gonna erase that. Not the whole horizon line, just the part that goes through the middle of the building. And that's just to help you see the building better. Sometimes when you have lines going through the middle, it kind of makes it harder to see the building. All right, that's our building. You've just learned how to create really simple boxes in 1-point perspective. And this is 1-point perspective. Someday we'll learn 2-point perspective and it'll be a little bit different. And then you can go in and just add doors, windows, whatever you want. Technically, even the angles of the doors would kind of angle towards that dot, but that gets complicated and we don't have a ton of time. So we're just going to draw some really basic ones. I'm not going to worry too much about the perspective because I don't want to confuse you on our first perspective assignment. Windows and doors could be round, they could be boxes, they can be whatever you want. I'm keeping it simple today. We'll get more complicated with these types of drawings later. Today our goal is to just practice perspective. Could add some on this side if I wanted to. Now that I'm done with the horizon line on this side, the diagonal line, this diagonal line, we don't really need it anymore because we're done drawing the diagonals. So I'm just going to erase the part that is not connected to a building. Like that. Okay. Now, we're just going to draw some simple trees on the other side, partly to just save time, because I know this was a lot of directions and it's a lot of things to pay attention to. So we're just going to draw some simple trees instead of more buildings. So on this other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw a diagonal line in the sky that goes to that dot. So I'm going to start at that dot, draw a diagonal line, goes into the sky. And this diagonal line is where the tops of the trees are going to go. Now, because it's a tree, it doesn't have to be perfectly angled. This has to be kind of close. When you're drawing buildings, the angles are more exact. When you're drawing things like trees or things in nature, they're not quite as exact. But this diagonal line is going to teach us where the tops of our trees will go. So for instance, I'm going to put my first tree right here, and it's going to touch the top. And I'm just going to do a really easy tree where I just draw like a wiggly line around the whole thing, kind of like the trees you would draw in kindergarten. Just a little wiggly line, wiggly circle. That's our tree. We're not doing anything super fancy because we don't really have time for that in today's lesson. So wiggly line for the tops of the tree. And then when we draw our tree trunk, just going to draw a line down, kind of like this. I'm not going to put a whole lot of time and effort into that. We're just trying to get everything in the correct perspective today. Now this tree's small, but as we go out this way, they'll look a little bit bigger. So I'm going to put another tree. This one's going to go up to this line again, has to touch the top. And it's also going to be a little rounder and bigger because it's touching the top. So it touches the top of that line. Draw another straight line down, kind of like this. Now it is important that this tree is smaller than this tree. This tree should be taller. It should be, because that's perspective. When things get farther away, they get smaller. I'm just going to put one more tree in. This one is just going to barely fit, but I'm just going to have this one like hang off the paper just a little. Now put one more tree in, kind of like that. And again, this is practicing perspective. If it's not perfect, we're cool with that. So all the trees, the very top of the tree touches that diagonal line. That's what creates the perspective. Now I'm erasing the part of the diagonal line that we don't need. I can also erase the horizon line that goes to the middle. Because really, unless the tree is like a ghost, you wouldn't see through the tree. All right, there we go. Now, your drawing is basically done. At this point, you can add details. You could add cars or people or trees or animals or whatever you want. But the perspective part is done. So at this point, I'm just going to add some random little details. But you can add whatever details you want because it's your picture. So I'm going to add some cars. But keep in mind, your picture, you can draw whatever details you want to draw. Today I don't think we're going to color because I don't think we're going to have time. We're just going to get it sketched out. This is really good practice for perspective. And we're going to be doing several perspective lessons in the next few weeks. So don't worry if yours is not perfect. This was our first attempt. Next time, we will try to keep it, we'll do something else with 1 point perspective so that we get some more practice. But again, this is just a sketch today. Maybe some mountains. All right. And that's all I'm going to do today. I've got some mountains, I've got a sun, I've had some cars, really simple. And I think I'm going to stop here and say that mine is finished. If you have time, you're welcome to color it. However, when I grade these, I'm mostly grading on whether you attempted perspective. I'm not so worried about whether it's colored in. So if you have time, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Here's what mine looked like when it was colored in. Okay, so it is time for you guys to work. If you need any help, please let me know. I am here on Zoom to help anyone who needs it.